Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the afternoon show. Now, this show is all about using logic and applied logic. Now, normally I just wing it. I don't have an outline. I don't even know what I'm going to say most times. But this show, I've laid out a little bit of an outline of the points that I want to make, which is a little bit unusual for me. But the first thing I want to discuss, it says, first point, what would happen with a complete meltdown of the world's financial system? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to outline these points. I'm going to draw a conclusion about what I think is going to happen. Because I've heard an awful lot of economists say out there that the markets are all completely controlled. That they can go up and down with the click of a mouse, and that these maniacal powers that be will click that mouse and make it all fall and make it all crash down to the ground, and that's it. I mean, we'll be in complete and utter devastation, you know. The electrical grid, everything, internet, everything, you know. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay all this out logically and let you guys decide what you think. So the first point I want to say is, what would really happen with a complete meltdown of the system? Everything in this system runs on money. And in 2008, we were facing a meltdown of the system. It nearly happened in 2008. They only stopped it by a few hours. But what makes the system melt down is not inflation. It's the opposite, deflation. And basically what happens is all of our world's money that we have everywhere, all of the money in the entire world, is all created from debt. And when there's basically a margin call on all of this debt, everybody wants, because say a big bank like Deutsche Bank goes down, everybody wants their money. They're all like panicking then. Where's my money? They want it, and they want it now. That creates a huge problem in the system. This is what a meltdown is all about. If left unchecked, a complete meltdown of the system would actually bring everything to a grinding, screeching stop. Everything would stop. There wouldn't be any transactions. Everything would completely stop in a complete, utter meltdown. The system would lock up and freeze. And if this advances too far, goes too far gone, then what would happen is it would be like Humpty Dumpty falling off the wall. Now, Humpty Dumpty, what he was supposed to be was an egg. You know, fell off the wall. He took a great fall. He landed on the ground, and he busted into a million little pieces. Humpty Dumpty took a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men could not put Humpty Dumpty back together again, because he was a shell. And the shell smashed into little pieces. Eggshells everywhere. So this is what we're talking about. We're talking about, maybe I should call it the eggshell phenomenon, you know, where the system could come crashing down, and there's no way, nobody out there, no any one person in the confusion, they could get it up and running again if they let it go too far. And this is what deflation can do. This is why the central banks, they have the tools to fight deflation. They have all the tools they need to fight deflation, but they got to do it fast. Because it can shut down the world's financial system. It can spiral out of control. It's like a flywheel. You know, when a flywheel first starts, what a flywheel does is it stores energy. Right? But once it gets going, it's hard to stop it. That's the way with the financial system. And that's the way with deflation. It's like that same flywheel idea. If it gets too much momentum, I know a good way of explaining it to you guys. You ever seen a guy that parks his car on a hill, you know, and he forgets to put the emergency brake on? He walks, takes 2 steps away from... This has happened to me. In fact, I've had this happen to me on film. On one of my channels, I filmed it and put it on with my pickup truck. It ran away on me. I didn't put the emergency brake on tight. It took off down the hill. I jumped in behind the wheel and stopped it. But the faster it gets going, the harder it is to stop it. If you can catch it when it first starts to roll, if you're right there and you watch it and it first starts to roll, you can jump in and stop it real quick and easy. But if you let her get a lot of momentum, you'll be running behind it trying to catch up. It runs away. So that's what would happen if the financial system melted down. Now, the second point I want to make is that all the markets are now controlled. I believe this is true. What happened in 2008 during the financial crisis of 2008? It scared them. It quite literally scared them big time. The people that are in power. And from that point forward, they decided to start controlling everything so that this couldn't happen. So that they won't lose their power, because they know. Well, I'm going to get onto that in the third point. So I'm going to jump right from that point about the markets are controlled, and I believe they are controlled. But I'm going to jump to the third point, the rich and powerful, and how they see things. Now, you guys that are working in the, basically I'll call it in the trenches, you guys that are in the trenches, you guys are right down there and you're working on the first level of this pyramid scheme. You're doing a lot of people are doing manual labor, some of you are doing office work, whatever you're doing, but your paycheck generally isn't sufficient to, it just barely gets you by. At the end of the month, it's all gone. You're not really so frightened of this financial catastrophe, this up-and-coming financial catastrophe. It's the rich. And I'm going to explain to you why. The rich are terrified of not so much losing all of their wealth. They are scared of losing all of their wealth, but they're absolutely terrified of losing their power base. And you say, well, how would they lose their power base if there's a financial collapse? If there's a total and utterly devastating financial collapse, several things are going to happen. One of the first things is when order is restored, and eventually it would be restored, they're going to do a comprehensive search, or maybe we could even call it a trial, of how it happened, why it happened, and who was responsible. Now, if I know this, I guarantee you that the rich people out there know this as well. That's one point I want to make. The second point I want to make is right now, take a look at the lifestyle that the rich and the controllers, I'll call them controllers, the 1%, take a look at their lifestyle that they have. Do you really believe that they want to lose that lifestyle? They're not like you, all of us. They're not like us. We have to get up early in the morning, and we have to start working right away. We have to make our breakfast first off, and that's work. We don't have our breakfast made for us. These rich people, they can sleep in till 11 o'clock in the morning, get up and do their texting on their cell phone, and find out that they've made $100,000 while they've been asleep, or maybe even $1 million while they've been asleep. They get up, and the maid, actually not even the maid, the person that takes care of their dietitians probably made their breakfast for them already. Talk about a pampered lifestyle. You get up like 11 o'clock in the morning, and they can make like $1 million in that day just making certain decisions and just getting on their phone and telling those decisions to be like giving orders. Buy so much of this stock, or I want this factory closed, or whatever, This is power base. This is a power base. And they have a surge of energy that comes off of this, makes them feel wonderful. They're smart. I know an awful lot of times we say, oh, they're stupid. These rich people are stupid. They're not stupid. They didn't get into the positions where they are without being very intelligent. In fact, they've moved up into these positions by being super intelligent, a little bit more intelligent possibly than the most of us. So they know about the things I'm talking about right now. They figured all this out already. They know that a complete meltdown of the system means that it would bring them down not only to our level, below our level, because we would be in a state of hard state of affairs, and they would be even in a worse state of affairs than us, and they know this. So yes, some of them do have the power to click a mouse and bring the system down, right? And turn this world into the Stone Age. They have that much power. But this is the thing they're frightened of most. This is their absolute biggest fear. This is more of a fear for them than you could possibly imagine. And in 2008, it scared them to death. This is why they've put in the banking system. They go through and they check all the banks, and they make sure they got enough capital to pass a stress test in case there is another financial crisis. This is why they've put these laws in place. This is why they've got the plunge protection team in there, ready to support the market now at this point. This is why everything is in position to try to save the system, because it saves their power. If the system goes down, they lose all their power. Now, does this sound logical and reasonable to you guys? A reasonable, logical conclusion? But now I'm going to give you guys another reasonable, logical conclusion is that the system's going to go down on them anyway. But they're going to try to hold it off as long as they possibly can. You know? They're going to try to forestall it as long as they possibly can. So now we're going to get into how are they going to try to forestall it. First off, let me see on my thing the points I wanted to make out. Deflation. Deflation is a system shock, and this is what happened in 2008. And it's their most frightening thing that they have, that they're frightened of, their biggest fear, is deflation. A system shock, a lockup of the system, a credit freeze, so that the system will come down, and in deflation can bring it down fast in a matter of hours even, or days. Deflation can bring. This is why they're so frightened of deflation. But what about the opposite of deflation? What about inflation? Inflation is different. Inflation is more of a slow disintegration of the system. There's a number of pluses for the super rich with inflation over deflation, and they're terrified of deflation. But there's a number of pluses that they get, bonuses that the government gets for inflation. One of the big bonuses is it's a slow disintegration of the system that lets the rich and powerful stay in power a lot longer, and they're able to kick the can down the road. And this is basically what they've been doing since 2008 till now, is they've been working toward the side of inflation. What does the World Central Bank tell you, the United States Federal Reserve tell you that they want? We want inflation. They don't tell you we want deflation. They say we want inflation. We have inflation targets, they tell you. And this is because they realize there's a crisis coming in the future. They realize that they cannot keep expanding the monetary supply forever without it ending very badly. They realize that. But they want to stay in power until they're out of office and they can blame it on somebody else. And this is what inflation allows them to do, is this slow disintegration of the system. It lets the rich and powerful stay in power longer. It puts it off to another day. It puts it off to the future. So what if your grandkids are going to have to pay for this? Big deal. As long as they can stay in power a little bit longer. But there's also benefits to inflation. Now remember, we're doing this logically. The benefits to inflation is, one, they can use helicopter money. Helicopter money pacifies the people. It's just like a baby when you give him a pacifier, calms him down, settles him down, and quiets him down so that you can get some rest and peace. So this pacifies the people, the helicopter money. So if they start doing things like payroll tax cuts, things like tax rebates, things like some new form of food stamp programs or whatever, they make you dependent upon them. And by making you dependent, they pacify you, and they make you basically on their side. It's just like if you went to somebody's house and he had some Rottweilers, and instead of there going empty-handed, what you did is you had to go to that house. Say your girlfriend was at that house, you had to go in through the chain link fence, two big Rottweilers. Hey, your girlfriend's at the house, So what do? You sneak a few dog biscuits in your pocket. Why? Because you can pacify those dogs. Dogs love dog biscuits. Well, here's the thing. This is the same thing. They're pacifying the general population by giving them handouts. Guaranteed income for all. New food stamp programs. This way the government can control. And this adds to the inflation. Okay? Make work projects. Infrastructure projects and everything else. These are all tools that they have. These are inflationary tools that they have and they will use. Allows them to stay in power longer. Helicopter money. Subduing the people. And this also, if they increase inflation and the dollar becomes worthless, this means at a certain point, when the dollar becomes worthless enough and they've printed enough of them, well, they can pay all the unfunded liabilities. Pensions, no problem. If the dollar is only worth 1/100th of what it's worth now, or even less, they can pay the unfunded liabilities in worthless money. It all makes sense, see? And also, they get to steal your bank account because this inflation is a hidden tax that'll eat your purchasing power of your dollars in your bank account through this hidden tax of inflation. Negative interest rates, which is where we're headed, helps them tremendously in this. Because this is directly taking your money from your bank account. If they get a negative 5% interest rate, that means they're going to be taking 5%. The banks are going to be taking 5% of your money every year that's left in the bank. This is where we're headed, guys. We better get used to it. So now, all of these points that I've made for you guys, and I'm trying to keep this show a little bit, not let it get too long, should point to you guys which way this is going to go, because the opposite of this, to let the system spiral out of control into a deflationary collapse, would be the biggest thing that the powers that actually have control over the mouse that controls the internet and controls everything else, they have that. I believe they have that power through the plunge protection team and a number of other things that they have. I believe they can control the markets. Most all of the markets are completely under their control. But do they really want to go in that direction? I think it's their biggest fear. Their absolute biggest fear. Why would they want to do that? Because it would basically, if the world disintegrated into a total meltdown where money drives the entire system and everything just basically breaks apart like Humpty Dumpty, and everybody is left so that you don't have anything that functions and it's just complete, nobody even knows what's going on. Well, then these rich, powerful people that control the system now don't have any power. It makes them completely powerless. And it brings them right down to our level of survival. I believe this is their biggest fear. This is what keeps them awake at night. So to be honest, are they the ones that's going to take us there? I very much doubt it, guys. I very much doubt it at this point. And yes, I do believe they have control over the markets, and they're going to pull out tricks when this game starts to get rough, and I believe it is going to get rough in the very near future. They are going to pull tricks out of their hat to keep this going like you've never seen before. And all of these tricks that they pull out of their hat, every single one of them, without exception, is going to lead to more compounding inflation. So ultimately, the system is going to collapse. Probably completely and utterly. But it's not going to collapse from the deflation. It's going to do the slow collapse from inflation. And ultimately, in the end, this is going to lead to non-dollar denominated assets, things that are out of the dollar, because the dollar is going to be the target of this inflation. Things like gold, silver, cryptocurrencies are going to have a stairway to heaven, just like in the song, Stairway to. They're going to be slowly going up and up and up toward the moon, with no stopping them in sight, because all of the world's value is going to be compressed into these items. But it's going to take a little bit longer. Deflation is fast. Remember, deflation is fast, but inflation is a slow cancer. It takes time. It comes in stages. Now, the first stage is getting ready to start, and that's when we go into a period of stagflation, where we have inflation like the 1970s, but with no way for the central banks to stop it, because they can't raise interest rates to 20% like Paul Volcker did to stop it in the 70s. They don't have that tool available anymore. And do they really want to stop it anyway? I personally believe that they want it, because it allows them to pay off the unfunded liabilities. It allows them to keep sending out all the Social Security checks. It's just that you're going to find it with probably what we're going to be looking at is probably in excess of 30% per year, and this is the initial stage of the inflation. That means that after the first year, your checks are going to have a 30% cut off of your, and if you're on a fixed income, this is going to be very bad news, because what used to cover everything, now you're going to find it only covers your rent. And now how do you get your food money? This is where we're going. So this is where the social programs come in, the new food stamp programs, guaranteed income for all, and all this kind of stuff. These social, and this is going to extend their control out over the people. This is where we're going. So in the first year, you're going to see this stagflation higher and higher. It's going to increase as time goes by, and it's going to get faster and faster until a certain point. I can't tell you where that tipping point is, when the people say, hey, you know what? I don't have any faith in the purchasing power of these dollars anymore. I'm getting out. And they go in and pull their money out of the bank account. What's left of it. And they go out and they buy Bitcoin. Or they buy gold, or they buy silver. But they're going to pay an awful lot more for it than they're paying now. But they'll buy it anyway. They'll buy it anyway, because the alternative is to stay in the dollar at that point. And, the gold price at that point might be $5,000 an ounce. They'll take their $10,000 out of the bank and buy 2 ounces with it. That's what they'll do. But once they lose confidence. And so that's when you're really going to see the gold price shoot up. This is nothing what's happening now. I know some of you guys are getting excited, but this is nothing compared to what's coming. Because what's coming is hyperinflation, and in the end, What's an ounce of gold worth in a hyperinflation? $1 billion? $1 trillion? Well, the United States government was going to make $1 trillion platinum coin. And this was a few years ago. So what's a coin worth? $1 trillion? What's a dollar worth? What is 0 times 0 times 0 times 0 times 0 times 0 times 0? It's still 0. So how can you buy an ounce of gold if you're in a hyperinflation? Because the guy that owns the ounce of gold knows that today it's worth 1 million and tomorrow it's going to be worth 2 million. And you're sitting there offering him 1 million? Is he going to take your $1 million for it? I don't think so. Give me a thumbs up, guys. Thank you very much for listening. And we'll catch you guys in the next show. Bye-bye, guys.